Hey everyone, this is Meyer, and in this video what I'm going to be doing is showing you another way you can chop up and load up samples into Icarus. And this one we're going to be using the sample loop feature on the oscillator to create a loop like this along with the comb filter. Cool. Alright, so as before, what I'm going to do is just go ahead and I'm just duplicate this loop that I have because we already have the right color and everything. Call this loop 2. And what I'm going to do is click the initialize and initialize the patch. And first, we're going to just go ahead and take off all this EQ just because we don't need it. And what we're going to do for this is we're just going to use oscillator 1 to play a looped sample. So we're going to take the volume envelope all the way up to sustain, take the release down so it's not decaying at all. And what we're going to do under this tools is we're going to load a sample. So what I'm going to do is load this percussion 2 sample. Sounding pretty good. It's going to ask if I want to auto tune the sample, and I'm going to click no because I want to just be able to play the sample. The next thing is I want to turn the key tracking off. So it's not key tracking, and I want to bring this up to the right octave. So it centers it around octave 1. Playing it like so, that's exactly what we want. The thing that's important is when we go to the sample, we need to go to sample and sample loop. That way when it reaches the end of the loop, it starts back at the beginning. Now, one thing I should mention with this versus using the resynthesis is this will only work for samples that are in the right key or that don't have a key at all. Otherwise, you're going to have to adjust the pitch and adjust the speed that it's playing this at to fit with the tempo of your track. But since we're here at 138, we don't have to do any sort of stretching. This loop was at 138. You don't need any of the fade at all because it's just going to be looping, although you can do some weird stuff with beat juggling as well if you choose some sort of like noise and just go ahead and change the shape. I guess that isn't really doing it. You would need to do something like weird, something like these gated patterns. But we don't need to do anything like that. I'm just going to use this sample to play it straight. I just wanted to show you how you could use the LFO to actually juggle around the loop in different areas. Or you could use a step LFO as we did before. Now, of course, we can also use these different filters to play around with the sample. One of the fun things to do is something like resampling. Anything that's going to give this loop movement over time to keep it from just being kind of the same. This comb one's also pretty interesting. One of the things I sometimes like to do is turn on the parallel, and then if I modulate this, I can adjust the balance. Something like this, so we can go ahead, use this LFO. And what's really important here is that we choose a sort of, we choose a speed that's different than the other loops, so they're kind of talking to each other. So now we have both of the loops coming through, which is pretty cool. Under the effects, what I may do is first add a distortion, maybe a saturation. The reason I'm going to do it here and not on the filter is so it's applied to the result of both filters. Over here, what I'm going to do is add a high cut filter. Because this one I'm using in bypass mode, this will allow me to kind of sweep this down as we want to filter the loop in and out. So the cutoff is there, and what I'm going to do under the matrix is set the MIDI mod wheel to the effects FX3 parameter 1. So that's the maximum value. Now you can see what happens. This is 0 and this is positive modulation, which then opens up that filter. And lastly, because this is a mono signal, what I want to do is, well, there are a couple of things I could do. One of the things I could set this to stereo. The thing you need to be careful when you do this is the stereo image. Or what we can do is keep this in mono and choose the auto pan. So we can go to panning, auto pan. You can hear it's subtly panning it to the left and right, giving it some movement as well. And lastly, we could add this kind of this feedback, which would basically add some delay. I like that. I think I'm going to keep that, maybe add a little bit of high cut. And here's how you can just use this loop basically pretty simply. We can kind of do what we did before. Take the MIDI for this, create a new channel called loop 2, paste this in, and then just paste this as well. You can put this underneath like this. And then lastly, what we want to do is go ahead and tweak this mod wheel so we can modulate it. So here in FL Studio, tools, last tweak, create automation clip. So that way we have this underneath as well. Here it is, loop 2. And what I'm going to do is just once again, as we do before, make sure this is linked with that channel. So it's really important. I'm going to just keep this in mono. And actually what may be better is, rather than doing this, it's fine for 1 bar. So maybe I'll just have it play for 1 and then just re-trigger it at the end. And one of the things that I'm hearing as I'm doing this is, if I go to the setup, I want to set this to free running. So that way these LFOs, they don't restart. They're playing regardless of when the note is triggered. Sounding pretty good. Let's go ahead and add in this automation here at the end. Yeah, like so. That's sounding pretty good. I'm happy with the way that's sounding. Let's go ahead and listen to this in context. Maybe bring these down and bring the lead down a little bit. Cool.